DADA, a crime lord who'd buried his heart in concrete and steel, just had it cracked wide open by one word from a baby he swore he'd never known existed. DADA, DADA. She lunged toward him with tiny arms outstretched, like she'd been waiting for him her whole short life. He stood paralyzed because somewhere in his gut, he understood what no one else in that smoke-filled room could comprehend. This wasn't chance. This wasn't some cosmic joke. And when the paternity results arrived 8 weeks later, they confirmed the truth that would upend 3 lives forever. The ruthless underboss who'd orchestrated hits without blinking was about to learn that some things can't be controlled with threats or money. Especially not a 15-month-old who'd recognized her own blood before anyone told her who he was. If you're already hooked, slam that subscribe button because this story gets absolutely insane in the next few minutes. Smash that like if you want to see how this impossible situation plays out. Drop a comment with DADA if you think you know what's coming. Trust me, you have no idea. Let's dive in. The baby's shrieks cut through the velvet-draped corridors of the Lotus Club like a knife through silk. "Please, Zara, baby girl, please," Naya whispered desperately, bouncing her 15-month-old against her hip. Her heart hammered as sweat beaded along her hairline. She slipped into the small staff powder room, frantically trying to calm her wailing daughter. 20 minutes. She had exactly 20 minutes before her performance for the VIP room, and everything was falling apart. The babysitter had texted at 5 in the morning about a family emergency. Naya had burned through her entire contact list in a panic. Her cousin was out of state on a job. Her neighbor, who sometimes helped, was in the hospital. Even the daycare lady she occasionally used wasn't answering her phone. No backup. No options whatsoever. And Naya absolutely could not miss this performance. Not when Kaz Yoon, the notorious head of Seoul's most feared organization, had specifically requested her presence. Not when her entire future at this club hung by the thinnest thread. "Please, baby," she breathed, kissing Zara's tear-soaked cheeks. "Just a little while longer. Mama needs just a little while." The other dancers scattered like roaches when light hits, their faces twisted with genuine fear. Everyone knew what would happen if Kaz Yoon, the Ice King of Korea's underworld, discovered a screaming infant in his pristine, meticulously controlled establishment. "Naya," Sienna hissed from the doorway, her voice urgent and sharp. "You need to shut her up now. Mr. Yoon just pulled up outside." Naya's stomach plummeted. Mr. Yoon was early. He was never early. The man moved like clockwork, precise to the minute. Always. But today, the one day she desperately needed those extra 20 minutes, he decided to break his pattern. "I'm trying," Naya shot back, her voice cracking. "I've tried everything." She's teething and she barely slept and she can feel how anxious I am. "Well, try harder because if Mr. Yoon hears that noise." "If Mr. Yoon hears what noise?" The temperature dropped instantly. Every woman in the powder room froze solid, eyes going wide with pure terror. Kaz Yoon filled the doorway like a shadow made flesh, his tall frame blocking any hope of escape. His black suit was immaculate, not a thread out of place. His dark hair was swept back perfectly, every strand where it belonged, and his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, swept the room with surgical precision before locking onto Naya and her screaming baby. "Sir, Sienna started, but stopped when Mr. Yoon lifted one finger barely half an inch. The gesture was almost invisible, yet it carried absolute command. "I asked a question," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. That was Kaz Yoon's signature. He never raised his voice, never shouted. His rage came in whispers, in that controlled tone that somehow cut deeper than any scream. Zara chose that exact moment to release another ear-splitting wail, her tiny face crimson with effort, miniature fists clenched tight. "Miss Laurent, Mr. Uzed," his gaze fixed on Naya. "I believe I made our policy regarding personal disruptions abundantly clear when you started here 8 months ago." Naya swallowed hard, her throat suddenly bone dry. "Yes, sir. And yet there appears to be an infant in my establishment." It wasn't a question. It didn't need to be. The judgment saturated every precisely spoken word. "The babysitter had an emergency," Naya managed, instinctively pulling Zara tighter against her body, as if she could somehow shield her from the underboss's glacial stare. "Family crisis." I called everyone I know, but it's so early in my performance for the VIP room. My office. Now. Just 3 words. No emotion, no inflection. Just a command that left absolutely zero room for discussion or negotiation. Then he turned and walked away, expecting, knowing she would follow. Naya's legs shook as she gathered Zara's diaper bag. This was it. She was finished. 15 months of struggling alone as a single mother, of working twice as hard as everyone else just to prove she deserved to be there, of surviving on 3 hours of sleep and convenience store meals. All of it wasted, and for what? Because the universe decided today was the day everything would implode. The walk to Kaz Yoon's private office felt like walking the plank. Zara continued crying, each sob hammering another nail into the coffin of Naya's career. Other staff members averted their eyes as she passed, their expressions mixing pity with relief that it wasn't them heading toward execution. If you're feeling the tension building, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Can you sense what's about to happen? Hit subscribe now to witness what occurs when this powerful crime lord encounters his match in the most unexpected form. Mr. Yoon's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone called the Ice King. Minimalist, dark, obsessively organized. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of Seoul's glittering nightscape. Not a single personal item disrupted the perfect symmetry of his mahogany desk. No photographs, no mementos, nothing suggesting a life existed beyond these walls. He stood by the window when she entered, back turned, hands clasped behind him as he surveyed the city like a general assessing territory. "Close the door, Miss Laurent," Naya obeyed, awkwardly juggling Zara and the diaper bag as she used her hip to push the heavy door shut. The sound of it closing echoed with terrible finality. "Sir, I can explain. Your child is still crying, Miss Laurent." Naya bounced Zara desperately, shushing her, pressing kisses to her curls. "I know, sir. I'm sorry. She's teething and missed her nap. I didn't have any other options." "I am not interested in justifications." Kaz turned, his expression unchanged, unreadable. "You've worked for me for 8 months. In that time, you've demonstrated talent, professionalism, and reliability. Until today." "Sir, please." "I don't grant second chances, Miss Laurent. You're aware of this. Everyone is aware of this." Zara's cries intensified, more insistent. Naya felt tears burning in her own eyes, but she fought them back fiercely. She wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of him. "Give me the child." Naya blinked, certain she'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "The child, Miss Laurent. Give her to me." Her arms tightened instinctively around Zara. "Sir, I don't think—" "That wasn't a request." Kaz Yoon stepped forward, arms extended, and Naya felt reality tilt sideways. Was he planning to physically remove her daughter from the building? Was this some power play to prove his absolute control? But his hands, when they reached for Zara, were unexpectedly gentle. "Sir, she doesn't like strangers. She'll just cry harder if—" Zara's head suddenly popped up from Naya's shoulder. Her crying stopped abruptly, like someone had flipped a switch. Her tear-stained face turned toward Kaz Yoon with an expression of pure recognition. Before Naya could process what was happening, Zara was lunging out of her arms, chubby hands reaching for the crime lord with urgency that made absolutely no sense. Naya tried to hold on, stammering apologies, but Zara was determined. "No, Zara, no. I'm so sorry, Mr. Yoon. She's never like this. I don't know what—" "Let her go." There was something different in Kaz's voice now, something Naya had never heard before, an emotion she couldn't identify in a man she'd thought incapable of emotion. Reluctantly, she loosened her grip and Zara practically threw herself into Kaz Yoon's arms. The sight was so incongruous, so utterly bizarre that Naya could only stare in mute shock. The Ice King of Seoul's underworld, a man rumored to have ordered executions during dinner meetings, was holding her daughter with the practiced ease of someone familiar with children. Zara immediately settled, her little body relaxing against Kaz's broad chest. She reached up one tiny hand and patted the underboss's jaw. "DADA," Zara said clearly, happily. "DADA. If you're screaming right now, smash that like button. Comment DADA and where you're watching from. If you felt that in your soul, keep watching. The real twist drops soon." The world stopped. Kaz Yoon froze, his entire body going rigid. Something flashed across his face. Shock, disbelief, and something deeper, something raw that vanished so quickly Naya almost thought she'd imagined it. She's never said that before, Naya whispered, horrified. Mr. Yoon, I'm so sorry. She's just learning words. She doesn't understand what she's saying. Her father isn't, she's never even met her father. Kaz didn't respond. He was staring at Zara with an intensity that made Naya's skin prickle. The baby, completely oblivious to the tension, snuggled closer, resting her head against Kaz's shoulder as if she belonged there, as if she had found exactly where she was supposed to be. The father, Kaz finally said, his voice carefully controlled. Tell me about him. Naya's chest tightened. This was not a conversation she wanted to have with her boss, especially not with her boss holding her daughter. Especially not after her daughter had just called him Dada. But Kaz Yoon's question hadn't sounded like curiosity. It had sounded like a demand. American, she said stiffly. He was here teaching English when we met. He went back to Chicago when I was 3 months pregnant. He doesn't know about Zara. Doesn't want to know. Name. Why does that matter? Kaz's eyes narrowed slightly. You're questioning me, Miss Laurent? No, sir. I just don't see how it's relevant to my employment status. Your employment status? Kaz repeated the words slowly, as if testing them. Yes, let's discuss that. He adjusted his hold on Zara, supporting the baby more securely against his chest. Zara made a small, contented sound and closed her eyes. She was falling asleep in Kaz Yoon's arms. In under a minute. Mr. Yoon, his assistant called from the doorway. The VIP guests are waiting in the lounge. Reschedule. Sir, the private performance. I said reschedule. The assistant's eyes widened, but she nodded quickly and withdrew, closing the door behind her. Kaz walked to his desk, still holding the now sleeping Zara, and sat down in his leather chair. He studied Naya for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You need better arrangements, he said finally. Sir, this, he gestured to Zara, cannot happen again. But your work has been exceptional, and I don't waste valuable resources. Naya's heart lurched painfully. Are you not terminating me? No. I'm promoting you. The words hit like a physical blow. I don't understand. You'll manage the club's operations. The office upstairs is vacant. You'll work there starting tomorrow. Your salary will be quadrupled. A child care allowance will be added to your compensation. Naya couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This made no sense. None of this made any sense. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Something flickered in Kaz's eyes as he looked down at Zara. Because your daughter needs stability, and you need resources to provide it. But you don't even know me, or her. Kaz's gaze returned to Naya, and for a fleeting second she thought she saw something almost like pain cross his features. Perhaps I know more than you think, Miss Laurent. Before she could respond, he stood carefully, transferring the sleeping Zara back into her arms. The baby stirred slightly but didn't wake. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring her medical records and birth certificate for the health insurance. Yes, sir. And Miss Laurent, one last thing. Kaz straightened his already perfect tie. The father's name. I still want it. Naya hesitated, then lifted her chin defiantly. Marcus Webb. But it doesn't matter. He doesn't matter. Something passed over Kaz's face, something that looked almost like relief. You're dismissed. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months. Life settled into a rhythm Naya had never imagined possible. Her new salary meant a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. The child care allowance meant Zara had proper clothing, proper toys, proper everything. For the first time since becoming a mother, Naya didn't feel like she was drowning. And then there was Kaz Yoon. The Ice King was changing. Not dramatically, not in ways most people would notice, but Naya noticed. She noticed how he stopped by her office every morning, ostensibly to review schedules, but inevitably ending up crouched beside Zara, who spent the first hour of each day in Naya's office before Mrs. A. Chen, the nanny, arrived. She noticed how Zara's face lit up every time Kaz entered the room, how she would toddle toward the crime lord, arms raised, demanding to be picked up, how she would pat Kaz's face and say Dada with such conviction that Naya had stopped trying to correct her. He's good with her, Mrs. Chen observed one afternoon, watching through the glass wall as Kaz showed Zara the view from his office window, pointing out buildings and landmarks with the patience of a natural teacher. "He's unexpected," Naya replied, not knowing how else to describe the contradiction that was Kaz Yoon, ruthless in business, gentle with her daughter. "Some men are like that, Mrs. Chen said with a knowing smile. They build walls so high no one can see over them until someone small enough slips through the cracks." Naya wanted to ask more, but her phone buzzed with an urgent message. The liquor supplier contracts needed revisions before tomorrow's delivery. By the time she looked up again, Kaz had returned Zara to Mrs. Chen and was back at his desk, the mask of the Ice King firmly in place once more. But the walls were cracking. Naya saw it in the small moments. In the way Kaz asked about Zara's development milestones with careful casualness, in how he referenced pediatrician recommendations he'd happened to read, in the stuffed animals that mysteriously appeared in Zara's play area, always of the highest quality, always perfectly age-appropriate. "I had a sister once," Kaz said one evening when they were working late and Zara had fallen asleep on the office sofa. "She would have been about Zara's age when she—" He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The pain in his voice told Naya everything she needed to know. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Don't be. It was a long time ago." He looked at Zara, something raw and painful crossing his face. "But sometimes I wonder who she would have become." It was the most personal thing he had ever shared with her, the most human she had ever seen him, and it made the mystery of his interest in Zara both clearer and more confusing. Can you believe how this story is unfolding? Drop a comment if you think there's more to Kaz's story than he's sharing. Where are you watching from? Subscribe now for the next part. Everything changed on a Wednesday. Naya was organizing files on her tablet when she accidentally opened a folder labeled Personal KY. She knew immediately she shouldn't be seeing this. Knew she should close it and forget it existed. But a familiar name caught her eye. Marcus Webb. Her fingers froze over the screen. Marcus Webb. The name she had given Kaz when he asked about Zara's father. Why was it in Kaz's personal files? Against every professional instinct, Naya began to read. Background check, travel records, medical history, fertility clinic records from 4 years ago. Fertility clinic. Naya's heart began to pound as she scrolled through document after document. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense until suddenly, horribly it did. She slammed the tablet down and burst into Kaz's office without knocking, something she had never done, something no one ever did. He looked up, momentarily startled. "Naya, what, you knew?" she said, her voice shaking with fury. "You knew all along." Kaz's expression changed, closed off. He set down his pen with careful precision. "Knew what exactly?" "About Zara. About me. About everything." Her hands were trembling now. "You've been investigating me since before I even started working here, haven't you?" Kaz was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound so weary it momentarily doused the flames of Naya's anger. "Sit down, Naya." "I don't want to sit down. I want you to explain why you have a file on my daughter's father. Why you have medical records from a fertility clinic that I never told you about. Why, because I was there." 3 words. Just 3 words. But they hit Naya like a physical blow. "What?" 4 years ago. Seoul Medical Center, fertility wing. Kaz's voice was flat, emotionless. "I had just been diagnosed with acute leukemia. The doctors were concerned about fertility complications from the treatment. They recommended banking genetic material. I did." Naya felt the room spinning around her. "No, that's not possible." Marcus Webb was a real person. The clinic used donor codes, not names, for privacy. Kaz's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw vulnerability there. "When Zara called me DADA that first day, I thought it was just a coincidence. A strange, impossible coincidence. But then I saw her birth certificate, the timing, and I started to wonder. So you had me followed, investigated. You invaded my privacy without my knowledge or consent. I needed to know. And do you?" Kaz nodded once, the movement almost imperceptible. "The paternity test confirmed it 2 months ago. Zara is my biological daughter." The world seemed to drop away beneath Naya's feet. She gripped the edge of Kaz's desk, suddenly lightheaded. "Paternity test. You took her DNA. How dare you? The pacifier she left in my office." I should have told you then. I wanted to, but I didn't know how. Naya laughed, a bitter broken sound. Didn't know how. You're Kaz Yoon, the great ice king. You order people's lives ended without blinking. You control half the city's underworld, but you couldn't figure out how to tell me you're my daughter's biological father. Naya, no. She straightened, pulling all her fractured pieces back together through sheer force of will. I quit, effective immediately. You'll have my final report by the end of the day. You can't quit. Watch me. She turned to leave, but Kaz's next words stopped her cold. The Huang family is preparing a takeover. If they succeed, the club will be burned to the ground. 50 people will lose their jobs, including you. And that's if they're merciful. Naya turned back slowly. What does that have to do with any of this? Everything. Kaz ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, the first sign of agitation she had ever seen from him. The attack is coming in 2 days. I need you here. I need your insights, your observations. He stopped abruptly. You need what? Your trust. Kaz's eyes found hers, and the raw honesty in them made her breath catch. I need you to give me a chance to explain, to make this right. For Zara's sake, if not for mine. Before Naya could respond, her phone rang. Mrs. Chin's name flashed on the screen. Miss Laurent, it's Zara. Mrs. Chin's voice was tight with worry. She's burning up with fever. The doctor is on his way, but she's asking for her father. She keeps crying for DADA. The pediatrician's face was grave as he examined Zara, whose small body burned with fever. Pneumonia, he said. Severa. The hospital is the only option. On the second night, when Zara's fever finally broke and she fell into her first peaceful sleep since arriving at the hospital, Naya felt her own exhaustion crash over her like a wave. She swayed slightly, catching herself on the edge of Zara's bed. Sleep, Kaz said, appearing at her side as if he had been waiting for this moment. I'll watch her. I can't leave her. I'm not asking you to. He gestured to the small couch. Sleep, Naya. I'll wake you if anything changes. Too tired to argue, Naya allowed herself to be led to the small couch. Kaz unfolded it with practiced efficiency, producing a blanket and pillow from somewhere. She sank onto the makeshift bed, intending only to rest her eyes for a moment. She woke hours later to sunlight streaming through the hospital window and the sound of quiet voices. Kaz was sitting beside Zara's bed, reading from a children's book Naya didn't recognize. Zara was awake, still pale but alert, giggling weakly at the funny voices Kaz was making for each character. Again, Zara demanded when the story ended. Again, Dada. One more time, Kaz agreed, his voice gentle. Then you need to rest so you can get better. Naya lay still, watching them. There was no pretense here, no calculation, just a man who had discovered he was a father trying his best to comfort a sick child. A child who had somehow recognized him from the very beginning. She knew, she said quietly, sitting up. Somehow, Zara knew you were her father. Kaz looked up, surprised to find her awake. Naya, the Huang family. Tell me everything, she interrupted. As Zara drifted back to sleep, Kaz explained the situation. The Huang family had been quietly consolidating power for months. They had allies in rival organizations, had been secretly meeting with key suppliers. Their plan was to launch a coordinated attack, eliminate Kaz, then absorb his territory and operations. They'll destroy everything I've built, Kaz said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Not just my business, but the livelihoods of dozens of people. People with families, with children. People like you. Naya studied him for a long moment. The great Kaz Yoon asking her how to save his empire. The Ice King looking at her not with command, but with trust. We counterattack, she said finally, but I have conditions. Name them. Full transparency about Zara, about your health, about everything. No more secrets. Kaz nodded. Done. And when this is over, we discuss Zara's future together, as equals. Is that all? For now, Kaz extended his hand. Partners. Naya hesitated, then took it. Partners. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of strategy sessions, clandestine meetings, and carefully orchestrated counter-moves. Zara recovered quickly, as children often do, and was released from the hospital with orders for rest and continued antibiotics. Mrs. Chin took charge of her care at Naya's apartment while Naya and Kaz worked tirelessly to save his empire. By the time they returned to Seoul, the tide had turned. The Huang family's key lieutenant had been arrested on weapons charges. Two of their allied organizations publicly withdrew their support, and the planned attack was called off indefinitely. Kaz's position was stronger than before, his leadership reaffirmed. "Come to dinner tonight," Kaz said suddenly. "Bring Zara." "Kaz, please." That single word, not a command but a request, decided her. "Okay, dinner." This story keeps getting more intense. Hit that subscribe button right now to see where this unexpected connection leads. Comment where you're watching from. We want to hear from you. Kaz's home was not what Naya had expected. Instead of the sleek, sterile penthouse she had imagined, it was a traditional hanok on the outskirts of Seoul, modernized inside but still retaining its classic architecture and peaceful garden. Zara was delighted by the koi pond, squatting beside it with childish fascination as the colorful fish swam beneath the surface. "This house has been in my family for 5 generations, Kaz said, watching Zara with a soft expression Naya had once thought him incapable of. "I grew up here with my parents and sister. After they died, I nearly sold it. But something stopped me." "It's beautiful," Naya said honestly. "Peaceful. It was meant for a family." Kaz's eyes found hers. "It's been empty for too long." The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken but unmistakable. When Zara was settled for the night, they moved to the garden. Night had fallen and lanterns illuminated the stone path and the small pavilion overlooking the pond. Kaz poured tea for both of them, his movements precise, almost ceremonial. "You promised transparency," Naya reminded him, "about your health." "The cancer is in remission, 3 years now. Regular checkups, clean scans." Kaz set down his cup. "I was 27 when I was diagnosed. The treatment was aggressive, the prognosis uncertain. Banking genetic material was a precaution I never expected to need." He looked at her, really looked at her. "And now I find myself a father to a child I never knew existed. A child who somehow recognized me on sight." His voice softened. "A child whose mother is the most remarkable woman I've ever met." Naya felt her cheeks warm. "Kaz, let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "I know I've done this all wrong. I should have told you the moment I suspected, should have approached you honestly, instead of manipulating the situation. I have no excuse except that I was afraid." "You? Afraid?" Naya couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "The great Kaz Yoon. Terrified," he admitted quietly. "Terrified that if I told you the truth, you'd take Zara and disappear. Terrified that I'd lose my daughter before I ever really knew her. Terrified that you'd see me as nothing but a DNA donor and not as someone who could be a real father to her." The raw honesty in his voice struck Naya speechless. This was not the Ice King speaking. This was just a man, flawed, vulnerable, human. "What do you want, Kaz? Really want?" "A chance." He reached across the table, his hands stopping just short of hers. "A chance to be Zara's father. A chance to show you who I really am beyond the business, beyond the reputation. A chance to see if what's growing between us might become something meaningful. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision. I'll provide for Zara financially. See her when you allow it. Be as much or as little a part of her life as you're comfortable with." His eyes held hers steadily. "But I hope you don't say no." Naya was silent for a long moment, considering everything that had happened in the whirlwind of the past months. The strange, inexplicable bond between Zara and this man. The glimpses she'd caught of the person beneath the Ice King facade. The way Kaz had stayed at the hospital reading stories until his voice grew hoarse. The way he looked at Zara with wonder, with tenderness, with love. "I don't know what this is," she said finally, gesturing between them. "I don't know if it's just gratitude on my part or guilt on yours or some bizarre circumstance throwing two unlikely people together. Does it matter if it becomes something real in the end?" Naya thought about that. "I guess not, but I need time. We need time. Zara needs stability, not confusion." Kaz nodded. "Time I can give. We'll go as slowly as you need." A small smile touched his lips. "Though I'm not sure Zara is as patient as we are. She seems to have made up her mind already." Naya couldn't help but smile back. "She's stubborn like her father apparently, and perceptive like her mother. She finally reached out, letting her hand rest lightly on his. A beginning, not a promise, but perhaps someday it could be both. 1 year later, Zara ran ahead on sturdy legs, chasing a butterfly through the garden of the hammock that had become her home. "Careful," Naya called after her, laughing as the now 2-year-old zigzagged between stone lanterns and flowering bushes. "I've got her," Kaz said, emerging from the house. He scooped Zara into his arms, spinning her around as the toddler shrieked with delight. In the year since the truth had been revealed, Kaz had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The Ice King still ruled Seoul's underworld with uncompromising standards, but he left that persona at the office door. At home, he was simply Appa to Zara and something much more complex to Naya. "You're spoiling her," Naya said as Kaz carried Zara back to her, the toddler already babbling about the butterfly's colors. "That's my job," Kaz replied, pressing a kiss to Zara's forehead before turning those dark eyes on Naya. "And spoiling you is also my job, though you make it considerably more difficult." "I don't need spoiling. Need and deserve are different things." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, while Zara patted both their cheeks with sticky hands. "More," Zara demanded. "More kisses." They laughed, and for a moment the world wasn't complicated or difficult or uncertain. It was just them, a family forged in the most unexpected way, through a child's instinctive recognition of what the adults around her had missed. That sometimes love is simply a matter of seeing past the walls people build to the person they truly are inside. That evening, after Zara was asleep, Kaz found Naya sitting in the garden pavilion, watching the moonlight on the koi pond. He sat beside her, taking her hand in his with the casual intimacy that had developed between them over the months of careful courtship. "I have something to ask you," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Naya turned to him, smiling. "That sounds serious." "It is." He produced a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring that caught the lantern light and threw it back in dazzling sparks. "This was my mother's. I'd like it to be yours." Naya's breath caught. "Kaz, I'm not asking because of Zara, though she's the reason we found each other. I'm asking because this year has shown me who I want to be and who I want to be with." His eyes held hers, open and vulnerable, in a way the world never saw. "I love you, Naya, not just as Zara's mother, but as the woman who saw past the Ice King to the man underneath. The woman who challenges me, surprises me, makes me better every day." Naya felt tears prick at her eyes. "I never expected this, any of this. When Zara called you Dada that first day, I thought my life was ending. I never imagined it was just beginning. Is that a yes?" She laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Yes? Of course it's yes." As Kaz slipped the ring onto her finger, Naya thought about the strange, winding path that had led them here. A desperate single mother with a teething baby, a cold crime lord with a hidden past, a child who somehow knew from the very first moment exactly who belonged in her life. "Zara will be thrilled," Kaz said, pulling her close, "though I'm not sure she'll understand the difference. She's been calling us a family since she could string words together." "Smart kid," Naya murmured against his shoulder. "Maybe we should listen to her more often." "I always listen to her. She has her mother's wisdom and her father's stubbornness." They held each other under the moonlight, the future stretching before them like the garden path. Not always straight, not always smooth, but leading home all the same. A home built not on biology or circumstance, but on choice, on trust, on love that came in the most unexpected package. Baby's recognition of the father she had never met, but somehow always known. The wedding came 6 months later, held in the garden where Kaz had proposed. It was a small, intimate affair. Just close friends, a few trusted associates, and Mrs. Chen, who cried through the entire ceremony while holding Zara. Naya wore a dress the color of champagne, simple and elegant, with Zara beside her in a miniature version, flower petals clutched in her chubby fists. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, Zara shouted, "No!" so forcefully that the entire gathering erupted in laughter. "She takes after you," Naya whispered to Kaz as they exchanged rings. "She takes after us both," he corrected, slipping the band onto her finger. "And that's exactly how it should be." But as the sun began to set and the reception moved into full swing, A black sedan pulled up to the gates of the Hannock. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair and eyes that scanned the celebration with purpose. Naya froze mid-conversation when she saw him approaching. The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the stone pathway. "Marcus," she breathed. Marcus Webb stood at the edge of the garden, looking impossibly out of place in his rumpled travel clothes among the elegantly dressed guests. His eyes found Naya, then shifted to Zara, who was being twirled around by Kaz on the makeshift dance floor. "I got your message," Marcus said, his American accent cutting through the ambient music and conversation. "Flew out as soon as I could, though I see I'm a bit late for the party." Kaz had already noticed the disruption. He set Zara down gently, said something to Mrs. Chen, and made his way toward them with the controlled grace of a predator approaching prey. "Mr. Webb," Kaz said, his voice perfectly polite, perfectly dangerous. "This is unexpected. I didn't send him a message," Naya said quickly, looking between the two men. "Kaz, I swear, I didn't. I know you didn't," Kaz replied, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "But someone did." A figure emerged from the shadows near the house. A woman Naya had seen before at the club, always watching, always lurking in the background. She smiled, the expression sharp and predatory. "Surprise," the woman said. "Did you really think the Huang family would just give up, Mr. Yoon? We simply changed tactics." The celebration ground to a halt. Guests began backing away, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Kaz's men materialized from their positions around the perimeter, hands moving to concealed weapons. "Mira," Kaz said quietly, "I should have known." "You should have," Mira agreed. "You destroyed my family's operation, killed my brother. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" She gestured to Marcus. "I found your little secret, found the real father. Thought it might be interesting to see what happens when he shows up to claim his daughter at your wedding." Marcus looked confused and alarmed. "Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I got a message saying Naya needed help. That she was being held against her will by some crime lord. That my daughter was in danger." "Your daughter?" Kaz's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Kaz, don't," Naya said, stepping between them. "This isn't what you think, isn't it?" Mira laughed. "He's the biological father, Mr. Yoon. The real one, not you. Your little fertility clinic fantasy? I had the records checked. The timing doesn't match. You were played." Naya's blood ran cold. She looked at Kaz, saw the walls slamming back into place, saw the Ice King returning. "Is this true?" Kaz asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "I don't know," Naya said desperately. "The DNA test, you said the DNA test confirmed." "I said a DNA test confirmed it," Mira interrupted. "I never said which test. The one I had done says otherwise." Kaz stood perfectly still, his expression carved from stone. Around them his men waited for orders, hands hovering near weapons. The celebration had transformed into a standoff, wedding guests trapped in the middle of something far more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. "Zara," Naya said suddenly, her heart lurching. "Where's Zara?" Mrs. Chen stood near the koi pond, the toddler no longer in her arms. The elderly woman's face was pale with fear as she pointed toward the house. "She ran inside," Mrs. Chen said. "Just a moment ago. I tried to follow, but—" Naya didn't wait to hear the rest. She bolted toward the house, Kaz close behind her, their conflict momentarily forgotten in the face of their daughter's disappearance. They found Zara in Kaz's study, standing in front of his desk with a folder clutched in her small hands. Papers were scattered across the floor where she'd pulled them down. She looked up when they entered, tears streaming down her face. "DADA," she said, holding out the folder to Kaz. "DADA sad." Kaz knelt slowly, taking the folder from her. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside were the real DNA test results, the ones he'd commissioned 2 months after Zara first called him DADA, the ones that confirmed beyond any doubt that he was her biological father. "The test Mira referenced," Kaz said quietly, looking at Naya. "It was fabricated. I had my suspicions, which is why I ran a second test through a different lab. This one." He held up the papers. "This one is real." Naya's knees nearly gave out with relief. "So you are—" "Yes." Kaz stood, scooping Zara into his arms. "I am her father." Biology confirms what she somehow knew from the beginning. They returned to the garden together, Kaz carrying Zara, Naya at his side. Mira's triumphant expression faltered when she saw them approaching united. The test was fake, Kaz announced to the gathered crowd, a fabrication designed to create chaos. But it failed. He looked at Marcus. Mr. Webb, you were used as a pawn in a game you don't understand. I apologize for bringing you into this. My men will escort you safely to the airport and compensate you for your trouble. Marcus looked at Naya, at Zara, at the life she'd built without him. She's really not mine? No, Naya said gently. She never was. I'm sorry you were dragged into this. Marcus nodded slowly, the fight draining out of him. I hope she has a good life, he said. Then he allowed himself to be led away by two of Kaz's men. That left Mira, standing alone, her plan unraveling around her. You killed my brother, she said again, but there was less conviction in her voice now. Your brother tried to kill me first, Kaz replied. He lost. That's how this world works, and you know it. But this... He gestured to the ruined celebration, to Zara crying in his arms. This was a mistake. You came after my family on my wedding day. There are lines even we don't cross. What are you going to do? Mira asked, finally showing fear. Kaz looked at Naya, at their daughter, at the life they were building together. When he spoke again, his voice was tired rather than angry. I'm going to give you a choice. You can leave Korea tonight. Start over somewhere else. The Wang family name still carries weight in other cities. Use it wisely. Or you can continue this vendetta and face the consequences. But know this, if you choose the second option, there won't be a third chance. Mira stared at him for a long moment, clearly expecting execution, not exile. Finally, she nodded. I'll leave. Good. Kaz gestured, and two of his men moved to escort her away. You have 12 hours. As Mira disappeared into the night, the tension slowly drained from the garden. The wedding guests, shell-shocked but safe, began to drift away with murmured congratulations and promises to celebrate properly another time. Soon it was just Naya, Kaz, Zara, and Mrs. Chen in the lantern-lit garden. Some wedding, Naya said, attempting humor despite everything. Memorable, Kaz agreed. He set Zara down, and she immediately toddled over to the koi pond, apparently unbothered by the evening's drama. You let her go, Naya said quietly. Mira? You could have. I could have, Kaz agreed. But I'm tired of that life. Tired of revenge and violence and endless cycles of retribution. He took Naya's hand, brought it to his lips. I want to be the man Zara thinks I am when she calls me DADA, the man you agreed to marry. That man doesn't execute people at his wedding reception. Naya pulled him close, resting her forehead against his. I love you, she whispered, even when you're making it complicated. Especially when I'm making it complicated, he corrected with a small smile. More kisses. Zara demanded from the edge of the pond, apparently having decided the fish were less interesting than her parents. They laughed and obliged, creating a small circle of warmth and light in the darkness. A family not broken by the evening's events, but somehow strengthened, tested and proven. The next morning, Naya woke in Kaz's arms in the master bedroom of the Hannock, sunlight streaming through the traditional paper screens. For a moment, she simply watched him sleep, this complicated, dangerous, tender man who had become her husband. Stop staring, he mumbled without opening his eyes. It's creepy. You love it. I do. He opened his eyes, pulling her closer. I love you. A crash from down the hall, followed by Zara's delighted laughter, interrupted the moment. And so it begins, Kaz sighed. The rest of our lives. The rest of our lives, Naya agreed. They found Zara in the kitchen with Mrs. Chen, apparently having helped make breakfast by spreading rice across every available surface. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Chen said, looking frazzled. I turned my back for 1 second. It's fine, Naya said, laughing. This is nothing compared to last night. As they cleaned up the mess together, Kaz in expensive pajamas, Naya in one of his shirts, Zara helping by making it worse, Naya realized this was what she'd been fighting for all along. Not perfection. Not some fairy tale ending. Just this. The messy, beautiful, complicated reality of family. Dada, Zara said, holding up a rice-covered hand. Stuck. Kaz knelt beside her, carefully cleaning each small finger. That's what happens when you play with food, little one. You play too? Not with food, no. Why? Because I'm an adult and adults have different rules. Boring, Zara pronounced, making all three adults laugh. Later that afternoon, after the house had been restored to order and Zara was down for her nap, Naya and Kaz sat in the garden pavilion where he'd proposed. I've been thinking, Kaz said, about the business. What about it? I want to transition out. Not immediately, but over the next few years. Move into legitimate operations. I have investments, properties, businesses that operate above board. I want to focus on those. Naya studied him carefully. Because of last night? Because of Zara. Because of you. Because I want to be able to tell my daughter what I do for a living without lying. He paused. My sister died because of this life. Because someone wanted revenge on my father. I won't let that cycle continue. It won't be easy. People will see it as weakness. Let them. I've spent my whole life being the Ice King, being feared. Maybe it's time to try being something else. Someone else. Naya took his hand. Then we'll do it together. Partners, remember? Partners, he agreed. The transition took 3 years. 3 years of careful maneuvering, strategic alliances, and calculated withdrawals from the underworld. There were challenges. Moments when violence seemed inevitable, times when the old Kaz Yoon would have responded with ruthless force. But he had Naya beside him, reminding him of who he wanted to be. And he had Zara, who grew from a toddler into a bright, curious 4-year-old who asked endless questions and believed her appa could do anything. By the time Zara started kindergarten, Kaz Yoon was known not as the Ice King of Seoul's underworld, but as a successful legitimate businessman with interests in real estate, technology, and hospitality. The Lotus Club had been sold, transformed into an upscale restaurant. The Hanok remained their home, a sanctuary from the world. How was school? Naya asked when she picked Zara up on her first day. Good. I told everyone my appa is the smartest person in the world. Did you? Yes. And that my umma is the prettiest. And that I knew they were supposed to be together before they did. Naya laughed. Is that so? Yes. Because I called Appa Dada first time I met him, remember? I remember, baby. That's because I just knew, Zara said with the absolute confidence of a 4-year-old. Hearts know things brains don't. That evening, as they sat together in the garden, Zara practicing her letters, Kaz reviewing legitimate business proposals, Naya planning the menu for the restaurant she now managed. Naya thought about that long ago day when everything had fallen apart and somehow come together. A crying baby in the wrong place at the wrong time. A crime lord with a secret past. A single word that changed 3 lives forever. Dada, what are you thinking about? Kaz asked, noticing her smile. How sometimes the worst days turn into the best beginnings. He set aside his papers, pulling her close while Zara continued her homework, tongue poking out in concentration. The best beginnings, he agreed, and even better middles, and I intend to make sure the ending is worth it too. No endings, Zara said without looking up from her letters. Just more beginnings. That's what teacher said. Life is lots of beginnings. Smart teacher, Naya said. Smart kid, Kaz corrected, ruffling Zara's hair. And there in the garden, with lanterns beginning to glow as dusk settled over Seoul, the family that had been born from impossibility, built from trust, and strengthened through trials, simply existed in their perfect, imperfect moment. A moment that said everything about who they'd been, who they'd become, and who they'd continue to be. Together. So there you have it. One impossible word that changed everything. One little girl who recognized her father before anyone told her who he was. One couple who found love in the most unexpected place. What did you think of this incredible journey? Drop a comment below letting us know your favorite moment. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell because we've got more amazing stories coming your way. Share this with someone who believes in unexpected love stories. And remember, sometimes the heart knows what the mind hasn't figured out yet. Until next time, keep believing in the impossible.